isn't doing it because of Biden. He will have to give in to the truckers because Biden does not want the fiasco that Trudeau has made for himself. Biden, I don't even think he's the decider down there. It may even be Jim Psaki herself. For all their flaws, they're grown-ups. And they don't need a spitting match with working-class Americans calling them Nazis. So I think Joe Biden's sense of self-preservation and terror about the looming U.S. midterm elections will cause him to take the stinger out on the U.S. side. The truckers will have done it, but the politician they will have convinced is not Trudeau, but rather Joe Biden. I believe that win is coming within days.
866-423. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and use my bonus code SHEPBET200 to win $200 in free bets if a three-pointer is made in the game you wager on. This
like an unstoppable
Stop searching the fridge for late-night leftovers. Come to Mike's Place, open late 7 days a week, featuring half-price apps after 8, bar exchange every Tuesday after 3. Plus, they're the home of the...
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I'm the one with the good genes.
What dating apps are you on? Can we find you on any dating apps, or will we find you on dating apps now that we know that this...
That don't impress me.
Today's best music, 96.3 WDVD. I'm Kim St. James, filling in for Dave Fuller today. So the Oscars are coming up in March, and they just announced...
Got it under control with a few antacids until bedtime and the heartburn comes back. Does this happen to you? Instead of fighting your heartburn,
we saw some of the overflow from the issues that were happening in Windsor. I can tell you that our local law enforcement handled it very effectively. We did have protesters. We did have rigs and farm vehicles, making their attempt to go down the 402 to the border, and they were effectively stopped. I think this is a severe overreach. I would agree with your first guess. That I think that this was a situation where it's actually just political cover that the government's looking for to be able to be seen to be doing something. And I'll just close off by saying, when you compare how they effectively, albeit a week later, dealt with things at Windsor versus how they're dealing with things in Ottawa, it speaks to me of the effectiveness of the local policing.
We should take another call. We've got Masood, who's on the line in London. Masood, we're asking what difference this invocation of the Emergency Act will make for you.
It is unfortunately, it's a little bit late. I wish they were doing it earlier. And if it was indigenous people doing this, if it was black people or people of color, I am 100% sure didn't take more than the 24 hours and everybody was arrested. Police, unfortunately, in Ottawa, take a side. They are biased. I'm asking for inquiry in police. What they do in white supremacy. People of color, it's not safe anymore in Canada. Anywhere you go. White supremacy is very high. American white supremacy, send the money to them. Why nobody asking this? They charge them for that.
Can I ask you,
Yes.
Masood, what has this crisis done to your faith in Canadian institutions?
You feel it everywhere. White supremacy is very high. I'm in Canada almost 30 years. I never seen like this time.
Just some of the callers from southwestern Ontario with their thoughts on the Federal Emergencies Act. That's from today's episode of Ontario Today here on Radio 1. Well, Canada took another step closer to a COVID-free life today. This afternoon, the National Health Minister, Jean-Yves Duclos, announced the easing of border restrictions. Now, Canadians returning from international travel will no longer need a negative molecular PCR test. Instead, they'll just require a negative antigen test, which in many cases is less expensive and much quicker to get those test results. Reportedly, these new measures will allow more airports across the country to accept international flights and ease international travel for Canadians. Here's Minister Duclos.
Today, I'm announcing that we are easing our border measures. These changes are possible, not only because we have passed the peak of Omicron, but because Canadians across the country have listened to the science and to experts, followed the public health measures, and taken steps to protect themselves, their families, and their communities. As of February 28th, therefore, the following border measures will be in place. First, we will be returning to the random testing surveillance program for all vaccinated travelers that was in place before Omicron came in. This means that fully vaccinated travelers arriving to Canada from any country in the world will only need to take a PCR COVID-19 test if they are randomly selected. Further, and perhaps most importantly, fully vaccinated travelers who are selected under the mandatory randomized testing regime will no longer be required to quarantine while awaiting test results.
Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos speaking in Ottawa earlier today. Well, November is the moniker of Gregory E. Fenelon. From Ottawa, but now living in Montreal, November crafts dreamy bilingual pop songs. This one's called Prophète.
Heavy, shake this like jelly. You gave me
just to go see that. Plus, we got your chance to win WWE tickets. As a bummer, but she's glad the Winter Games happened at all.
We still have an Olympics now, and we're still here, and we're still competing.
I think they're going to give poor people just enough so that it isn't like, oh, we're just like sending you out to the void of space. It's like, no, we've built some version of civilization.
There's a Holiday Inn Express there. You know, there are a hostel. You know, 80 apartments, 80 rooms. We're going to need you to build, you know, some convention centers and.
Yeah, but good news, there's a Chick-fil-A and a McDonald's.
Chick-fil-A still doesn't open on Sundays, but they are.
But one Sunday in space.
Sure.
Well, that is an interesting one. Yeah, I've never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I personally don't think about anyone going to space. So there's that.
Sure.
I don't think about the rich people going to space. I don't think about the poor people going to space. I'm not into space.
You're saying if presented the option, you would never
not
venture.
Go. 100% not. I don't want it. Don't care. I don't. Yeah. I mean, good. I get that it's the people, like the NASA people. The things they're doing is important. I'm happy they're doing it. I don't want any part of it.
What if the whole city was a Bojangles theme?
Nope. I got a Bojangles right down the street right now. Because I'm in North Carolina for a minute.
I don't think I would go to space, but I don't know that I would have the confidence that you have, Fortune, of being like, don't even want to know what's up there. I think I got to know something.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I like the information that comes forward, you know, like, oh, we need to know about this thing. I take that in. It's more like I have no desire to go there. Mm-hmm. Even if Richard Branson was like, here, you can be on my ship with me, or whoever's going up there. I'm like, I'd rather just go to your island and stay, you know, in the home, your rich home.
Yeah, that Mariah Carey hot tub.
Yeah, one of those. I'll forgo my seat to space.
What if Adele and Celine Dion were going to be in the other two seats on opposite sides of you?
Oh, that's
going
nice.
into space. Fortune.
I don't want to go to space.
Really? Adele's going.
No.
And Celine.
I don't want a rocket attached to my butt.
And that's just classic space. We all know. One of the first things they do in space is put a rocket up your butt.
Put a rocket in your butt. That's
Sounds
how
like
you
every
get
4th
up there.
of July.
I don't want it.
I will say that does seem to be the game. Is you have to pick the right. If you're going to go, you got to pick the right rich person to be going to space with. You know what I mean? You don't want to be.
Pick?
I don't want the Shatner of it all. You know what I mean? Like William
Amazon,
Shatner.
yeah, it looks a little cheap.
That doesn't seem right. Yeah, I want. I need LeBron. When LeBron goes to space, I'll go with LeBron.
Yeah, LeBron would be good.
All right.
Yeah, with Elon Musk. You don't want to go Amazon. That's a same package.
Yeah, give me the weird dude who's killing monkeys with chips. Let's get funky in space.
What do you mean? Are you saying Elon's killing monkeys?
Oh yeah, there was an article that came out that like a bunch of the he's trying to put chips in people's brains and he's experimenting on monkeys and all the monkeys are dying. Every single one.
What? Is this a fact?
This is what is being reported in the news. What are facts?
It was an article.
And by the news, do you mean your podcast and some comedian who came?
This is what I'm selling to the world.
Listen, I saw that article too. So.
See, Fortune knows it.
I know what you're talking about.
Really?
I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline.
Well, none of us read the articles.
That's because the chip that's already in your brain wouldn't let you.
Oh, close that out.
Langston Kerman, Bust Down is premiering March 10th on Peacock, and the podcast is My Mama Told Me. This is really great. I'm really excited to see Bust Down. That is really, it's right up my alley. Anything just built on, no, we just want to be as funny as possible and be goofballs. That's just joyful.
Yeah, if that's your vibe, you're gonna love it. You'll really dig it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming
happy
by.
for you guys. Yeah.
Thanks,
Congrats
y'all.
on the show and for sticking it out for all those years. You did it.
Yeah,
that is huge.
We're old and gray, but we have a show.
Amazing.
All right, when season 2 gets picked up, come back and tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Awesome.
All right, man. We'll see you soon.
See you later.
We'll be right back after some stand-up comedy, everybody. Langston
I remember I heard my mom and my dad trying to have a fight about my dad using crack. And my mom was trying to whisper, you know? So she was trying to have a whisper fight with the nigga, but you can't whisper to a crackhead. They're loud as fuck. So my mom's whispering, and then my dad goes, "Who seen me do the crack?" Which means, nigga, you did it. Now you're just trying to identify witnesses. Are they credible? Are they not credible? But you fucking did it. Now I'm gonna tell my mom about a problem. Bitch, this whole crack in the house. We got bigger issues. Stranger Things is a whole show about kids not trusting their parents. Like, if a demigod is after you, tell your mom. These little niggas like, nah, all I got is these walkie-talkies and these bikes. And my best friends. Cause that bitch can't handle shit. I mean, when I was 11, I thought I was gonna be abducted by aliens. I did. I was convinced, you know? I was like, aliens are coming to get my ass. And it's because when I was 11, I grew up in the 90s, bro. If you grew up in the 90s, you know aliens was a big thing. It was huge. It was big shit. It was. There was Outer Limits. There was X-Files. There was Unsolved Mysteries. And then every once in a while, the History Channel would just be like, did they build the pyramids? And just fuck your head up on a Wednesday night. Just throw a whole curveball at your ass. What? They could have built the pyramids. Crop circles were they here? Oh my God. So I was fucking...
Never knew where to find any of my shows, and the prices just kept going up. Thankfully, I discovered a new way to watch called Philo. For just $25 a month, I can watch all my favorite shows on networks like BET,
among the ethics. And also, we were, that was one of the reasons it was really great for us to give Jessica her space, because we needed the creative license to be able to take the story wherever we needed it to go. I love how I say we. I didn't write it.
But you're part of it. It counts. Well, okay, so this actually brings me to my next question, which is, I want to talk about the relationship between your character and Delby. Because, you visit her in the show multiple times in prison.
Yep.
There's a lot of push and pull. Like, who has the power? Are you friends? Do you trust each other? Like, what's that all about?
Really, what's that all about, Alfie? That's the whole question. You start off thinking that this is about, crimes and fraud and all the things that are on the rap sheet, right? And it's definitely about that, and that's all up for debate as well. And really in the bottom of all of this is relationships and how we treat one another, how we value one another. And I feel like we really get into the mess of human value and human relationships in this show. What is a friend? We meet a lot of people who consider themselves friends, and then they have to question what that means to them, and they all have a different definition, and they may all mean it, right? And then we have the professional relationships that, we think that they're all completely compartmentalized, which by now I think we know it does not exist. And you have to ask yourself, well, what's this relationship? It still affects me, but I can't call it a friendship, I can't call it romance, I can't call it any of these things. What is it? Because it's affecting me, and that is so much the human experience, and I think that is so much why when we discover that maybe we can't rely on one another, it becomes so scary,
So I heard or read that you read Janet Malcolm's 1990s The Journalist and the Murderer.
Yeah. When we are asking to have access to somebody's life and the intimacy with which you have to navigate that relationship, where do you find the lines, right? And I think that is why that is such an invaluable book, and I think that is why I think in the journalistic realm people know it so well, because it is something to be aware of, at least, right? It's just that questioner-subject dynamic. Even if we don't have as much control over it as we'd like to think, we at least can be aware of it.
Well, I think that also speaks to this idea of who is inventing Anna. Like, that's the name of the show. Is the journalist doing this? Is Anna doing this?
I think that's what brings them together every time, right? Is like they're both writing the story together.
Yeah, they can't kind of survive without the other, it seems.
Yeah, and they're the only ones doing it. Like they think they're the only ones doing it, but really everybody. Yeah, now we get into the philosophy of all this, which is where danger. You're talking to Klumsky, like that's where I'm going to take it. Like everything's a story that we write about ourselves or someone else, right? And sometimes there's stakes all around. Somebody is telling their version of what really happened, and to them it's absolutely fact.
Anna Klumsky plays journalist Vivian Kent in Netflix Inventing Anna. It is out now. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. Support for NPR comes from this station and from Indeed, a hiring platform designed to streamline the candidate search process. Businesses attract, screen, and interview candidates all from the employer dashboard. More at Indeed.com/NPR. From your part-time controller specializing in nonprofit accounting, your part-time controller helps nonprofit organizations with their accounting needs remotely or in person. More at yourparttimecontroller.com. And from Avalara, providing technology for business tax compliance using cloud-based real-time rate calculation and automatic return filing. More at avalaara.com.
WDET is supported by the Gilbert Family Foundation, which is working to connect
infection rate and time between new outbreaks is what public health experts will use to decide when the pandemic is officially over. But Sampath Kumar says it's likely that COVID will stay with us as a seasonal virus that peaks each winter.
We will see flares in different parts of the world, but it'll all become much more manageable, and we'll be able to handle it kind of like we do the flu.
When this will happen is harder to predict. Sampath Kumar is hesitant to say we're nearing the end because that's what many people thought before Omicron. The World Health Organization has yet to set metrics for when what it calls a public health emergency of international concern will end. But J. Alexander Navarro, a medical historian at the University of Michigan, expects local governments to signal their version of the end earlier by relaxing public health rules. That's what happened during the Spanish flu. Most of the U.S. decided it was over in 1919, but half the country continued to see outbreaks.
It was way too premature to declare that pandemic over. But there was a lot of social pressure to do so. People wanted to get back to life as normal.
Sound familiar?
So there's an inevitable politics to declaring a pandemic over.
Keith Whaley busy to mark the beginning of a public health crisis. It's harder to define its ending. And that's because if a virus isn't eradicated, the threat of it never fully goes away, especially for vulnerable communities. Take the AIDS epidemic.
For some, HIV/AIDS is over, but for many, it is not. It's still a part of their own lives, it's part of their community, and it's transformed the world as they know it.
Whaley says if COVID sticks around, it will continue to disproportionately affect the elderly, people who can't be vaccinated, and workers in healthcare and nursing homes. And we might have to adjust some public norms to accommodate. Employers may need to build seasonal outbreaks into their calendars, assuming employees will call out sick and business will slow. People may have to wear masks during COVID season. And these kinds of changes often happen after major virus outbreaks.
Pandemics open up conversations and transform society, sometimes in ways that today we look back and we say, of course, people have always washed their hands. Well, that's not true.
Hand washing didn't become more common until the 20th century during outbreaks of typhoid and tuberculosis. And condoms were only a method of birth control until the AIDS epidemic. Ultimately, Whaley says the pandemic will only end when people feel like it's over. For him, that'll be when someone near him coughs and he doesn't flinch. I'm Kristen Schwab for Marketplace.
Coming up.
Either you pay up or you're not going to run a business. That's it.
Seems harsh, but okay. First, though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 122 points today, 1.2%, closed at 34,988. The NASDAQ jumped 348 points, that's about 2.5%, hence the really happy music, 14,139. Or at least that's what I'm guessing. I'm not in charge. S&P 500 up 69 points, 1.5%, 44 and 71. We heard from Andy Euler about high oil prices and how that might finally start to sway how much we drive and spend on fuel. How about some road trip stocks, huh? Booking Holdings, they own Booking.com, up 3.5%. Airbnb, beat estimates, upgraded 6 0.1%. They heard from Justin Ho about lumber. So lumber stocks, Boise Cascade, it's Boise, by the way, not Boise, through 3.5%. West Fraser Timber fell 1%. Bond prices fell as well. Yield on the 10-year T-note, 2.04%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, offering online rate comparisons from multiple insurers. More on comparable rates at progressive.com. Comparison. And by GEP. GEP helps hundreds of Global 2000 enterprises transform their supply chains for greater agility and resilience with greater visibility and control. GEP software, strategy, managed services. GEP.com. And by Easy Cater, the food for work platform with 80,000 restaurants, online ordering, and 24/7 support, helping companies solve food for work nationwide, from employee lunches to sales meetings. Corporate food solutions at easycater.com.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Andalisi.
And I'm Chef James Regalo.
And in this episode of Essential Cooking, James and I talk with Chef Brennan Callan, owner of Satellite Food Truck. We talk food trucks, supply chain headaches, and the rising popularity of vegan food.
You're going to become a better human being eating vegan because you're going to step out of your comfort zone.
Listen and subscribe by finding Andalisi's Essential Cooking on WDET.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
The Essential Cooking broadcast and podcast is supported by La Marca Prosecco.
On Culture Shift, no topic is off limits, including sex and how we talk about it. Like when Detroit-based sex educator Zoe Ligon joined us to talk about a lack of sex education in the United States.
We're in a free country, and yet there's so much censorship and control over consensual sex between adults. Whether it's the laws, like obscenity laws, or things that have been criminalized, that are things that we can't believe today where everyone's criminalized.
Listen to Culture Shift, weekdays 12 to 2 on WDET.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kyle Rizdal. We obviously don't know yet what's going to happen in Ukraine, despite today's glimpse of optimism. There is some well-founded skepticism in the West, of course, and some countries are already doing what they can to squeeze Moscow. The Brits are threatening economic sanctions against individuals with ties to the Kremlin, and they might actually have some leverage here. At least 50 of President Putin's closest oligarch buddies are believed to have substantial assets in the UK, multi-million-dollar real estate holdings in particular. Now, to be clear, London has threatened to go after those assets before. Might this time be different? From London, Marketplace's Stephen Beard is on it.
Once the largest foreign investor in Russia, Bill Browder knows a thing or two about money and about the Russian leader.
It's pretty clear to me that the thing that Putin values most is his money.
Browder has long campaigned against Russian corruption, which he says starts at the very top.
Putin has been a kleptocrat for the last 2 decades. In that time, he's stolen a vast amount of money from the Russian state and from various people in Russia.
Putin has repeatedly denied such allegations. Browder instigated the Magnitsky Acts in the US, the UK and other countries. The laws impose sanctions on Russian officials, implicating the death of Browder's Russian lawyer after he uncovered a massive tax fraud. Now Browder says it's time to target Putin's ill-gotten gains.
The best way of dealing with Putin in Ukraine is to go after his money in the West. Well, first of all, he can't keep that money in his own name. He's got to have people who he trusts hold that money. I call these people oligarch trustees.
And he says many of them have a lot. Some of those assets featured before the pandemic in a sightseeing coach trip.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kleptocracy Tour of London. The aim is not only to expose the kleptocrats themselves.
Roman Borisovich, a Russian former banker and now anti-corruption campaigner, took a group of journalists on the Kleptocracy tour through some of London's most exclusive neighborhoods.
We showcased mansions, apartments, palaces attributed to Russian kleptocrats, but it's the very, very top of the iceberg.
Transparency International UK, the anti-corruption group, says there are at least 150 UK properties, $2 billion worth, owned by Russians with links to the Kremlin. Borisovich not only deplores the kleptocrats, but their British enablers as well.
They're being aided by an army of accountants, brokers, bankers, lawyers. These people are enabling this looting machine to exist.
But Russia's threatening manoeuvres on its borders with Ukraine is a turning point, says Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. She's just introduced tough new powers to freeze the UK assets of anyone with links to the Russian state.
Those in and around the Kremlin will have nowhere to hide.
But her statement in Parliament caused some hilarity. Many are sceptical about a crackdown on Russian assets. For one thing, says Transparency's Duncan Haynes, there's a massive loophole. Any foreign individual buying property here can hide their identity behind an offshore company.
Until we get the reforms we've been calling for to reveal who's really behind the foreign companies that own property here, the government would be acting with one arm tied behind its back.
He says more than 85,000 properties in the UK are owned by anonymous entities registered abroad.
It is frankly astonishing that people can buy up bits of Britain and Britain doesn't get to know who they are.
The government says it'll close this loophole in later legislation. But Roman Borisovich has his doubts. After all, he says the UK did not crack down on oligarch assets even after a nerve agent attack by Russians in the city of Salisbury in 2018.
I don't think that Russian aggression in Ukraine is any better reason to use these powers than killing a British citizen on British soil with the nerve agent. They will not touch the oligarchs anymore.
Embarrassingly for the UK, the US may share that skepticism. The Times newspaper quoted an American diplomat expressing the fear that Russian money is so entrenched in London now, the opportunity to use it as leverage against Putin may have been lost. In London, I'm Stephen Beard for Marketplace.
A federal judge signed off on a debt restructuring deal for Puerto Rico last month. It has been 5 years now since the U.S. declared bankruptcy. 5 years in which the Puerto Rican economy has been battered by hurricanes, earthquakes, and a pandemic. Chef Maria Mercedes Grubb has seen it all. The family-owned restaurant that she ran with her brother never fully recovered from Hurricane Maria, closed for good in 2019. Now, though, things might be different. Puerto Rico has just had a record-setting tourism year, and Maria Grubb is the executive chef of not one but two new restaurants in San Juan, where we caught up with her just as she was getting ready for evening service. Welcome to the program. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you, Kai. So great to be in the show again.
You are busy now opening two restaurants. Do I have that right?
That sounds about right.
How did that come to pass? Because last time we talked to you, it was much different.
It was very different. It was very bleak, like the rest of the world. It's just that, for us, it's been bleak for a while now. So what happened